The Book of Acts. This is part 2 of the work of Luke. Again, we read Theophilus in the beginning of Acts. In the book of Acts, Luke provides a history of the early church from the ascension until the time Paul is under house arrest in Rome in the early 60s. The key verse in Acts is chapter 1, verse 8. You will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you shall be my witnesses both in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and even to the remotest part of the earth. This outlines the book as the gospel spreads out from Jerusalem, then into the rest of Judea, Samaria, and it ends all the way in Rome. The outline, it begins with the ascension of Jesus in chapter 1. The birthday of the church takes place in chapter 2 at Pentecost. Chapters 3 through 8, witnessing in Jerusalem. Again, this is to Jewish people. And then witnessing in Judea and Samaria, chapters 8 through 12. And then the uttermost parts of the earth. And this includes also chapter 15, where they had to decide what to do about Gentile converts. Do they need to keep the Jewish ceremonial law? One could actually call this the Acts of the Holy Spirit, as the Holy Spirit is the one inspiring the disciples, as Jesus had talked about the necessity of waiting for the Holy Spirit. It comes in Acts 2, and the rest is the actions of the Holy Spirit in spreading the word and the gospel. The book details the acts of the Holy Spirit throughout the church in Acts 1, verse 8. Then in Acts 8:29, the Spirit said to Philip. Acts 10:19 through 20. And while Peter was reflecting on the vision, the Spirit said to him, Behold, 3 men are looking for you, but arise, go downstairs, and accompany them. Acts 13, and while they're ministering to the Lord and fasting, the Holy Spirit said, Set apart for me Barnabas and Saul for the work to which I have called them. So the key word here is the Holy Spirit. 40 of the 94 occurrences in the New Testament are in the book of Acts. Also, the Holy Spirit is referred to as the Spirit several times in this book. Key chapters to remember are Acts 2, Pentecost, the coming of the Holy Spirit, the day when 3,000 were baptized. Acts 7 is key, for there we have the sermon of Stephen. It recounts the Old Testament history, and then Stephen is martyred. Acts 9 is central, for here Saul is converted. After Jesus, he may be the most important person in the New Testament. While Peter takes the gospel to Jewish people, Paul goes to the Gentiles. Backing up a bit, another key verse is Acts 2:42, and they're continually devoting themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread, and to prayer. And those 4 practices continue to mark the church and also serve as an outline for what Christians do as they gather together. Acts 15. In Acts 15, we find the very important council in Jerusalem. The issue at hand was the disagreement over what to do with Gentiles who were coming to faith. Do they need to follow all the Jewish ceremonial laws and be circumcised? As the apostles spread out from Jerusalem, the gospel was spread, and it was spread primarily, as we see in the last section of Acts, through the 3 missionary journeys of St. Paul. On Paul's first missionary journey, he left Antioch with Barnabas. They sailed north to Perga. John Mark left them there. They traveled through areas of Galatia. Whenever possible, they began their ministry at a Jewish synagogue. Some accepted them in the message, and others did not. Paul went much farther on his second missionary journey. This time he went with Silas. In the book of Acts, we have a "we" section here, indicating that Luke was with them for part of this, and here they went all the way to Greece. In Paul's third missionary journey, he and Silas covered a lot of the ground they traveled and visited in the second missionary journey. During this journey, they spent over 2 years in Ephesus. Paul's last journey was his journey in chains to Rome. In this journey, he suffers shipwreck, and many have said that the best ancient description of a shipwreck is provided in Acts 27. Paul appears before several rulers before he makes his way to Rome, for he had appealed to Caesar. Just an interesting note, one important word that is missing in the book of Acts is the word love. It could be intentional, for love was central and needed, and by its omission, it is emphasized. And that's the book of Acts.